Okay, so we talked about measuring to the nearest inch, to the nearest half inch, and now we're going to talk about measuring to the nearest quarter inch. Okay, we talked about how inches can be broken down. If this is an inch, we can break it into halves, quarters. We can even go further and break it into eighths or sixteenths. Okay, and we have these handy little tick marks on the ruler to help us figure out how long something is. So if I have this line here, and I want to know how long this line is, measured to the nearest quarter inch, okay, we look, you can see that the line is 3 inches long. But if you see that I want it measured to the nearest quarter inch, some of you might try to tell me 3 1/4. Some of you might try to tell me 2 1 2 3/4. Okay, measuring to the nearest quarter inch doesn't mean, just like it doesn't mean with halves, that it has to end in a quarter inch. Okay, it just means that you use each of these little quarter inch marks on the ruler, and we talked about how there are 4 of them in every inch. You use each of those quarter inch marks to measure by. Okay, so if we look at this, a line could end on a quarter inch. Okay, it could end on a half inch. It could end on 3/4 of an inch, or it could also end on a whole inch. All right, so these are our choices when we're talking about where a line ends. So if we draw it out a little further to the next quarter, we see that now this line is 3 1/4. Okay, if we draw it out a little further to one more quarter, the answer would be 3 1/2, even though you're measuring to the nearest quarter of an inch. Okay, of course you could also say 3 2/4. All right, but that's just to give you an idea of how to think about it. So you're taking each quarter and you're figuring out how long it is. Okay, so of course if it's a little bit after this, a little bit before it, the answer would still be 3 1/2. But if it's closer to the earlier quarter or the earlier whole, it's going to be that number instead. Okay, so measuring something to the nearest quarter of an inch does not mean it needs to end on a quarter of an inch. It just means it has to be close to one of these marks that help separate the inch into 4 pieces. Okay, so that is all about measuring to the nearest quarter of an inch.